Hello everyone, my name is Ned and I'm a nerd. Okay, I know that's not funny, but I'm about to tell you a story that still puts a knot in my stomach to this day, so just give me this, okay? When I say I'm a nerd, what I actually mean is that I'm really good with computers, and not just your regular confident user either. I've been writing code since I was 13, and after 4 years, I've gotten pretty good at it. Too good, actually. Before all this went down, I'd been working on a little project that wasn't exactly legal. It was a program that allows you to hack other people's phones. I didn't really plan on using it against anyone, I just love a good challenge. And if this challenge would allow me to mess with some popular kids' phones, then that's just a nice bonus. I finished this program about a month ago and decided to give it a test run in detention. Hey, I said I was a nerd, not a goody two-shoes. There were only 4 other students in the classroom. The teacher was gone for the most part, so I felt pretty safe trying my new program. I sat at the back of the room and turned on my laptop. I'm not going to bore you with the details of how it worked exactly, plus I'm a little concerned that I'd get in trouble for revealing the principles of, well, let's just call it what it is, my illegal spying program, but it was a success. I managed to collect data from all the phones that were connected to our school's Wi-Fi and located within a 50-foot radius. I couldn't believe it. I decided to look through the data I'd collected. The main reason I wanted to do that was... am I gonna sound like a creep if I admit that my crush just happened to be in this classroom as well and I wanted to go through her photos? I know it was so wrong, but I just couldn't resist. I was hoping to see some cute selfies, and definitely dreading seeing any pictures with a boyfriend I didn't know she had. Plus, I already invaded all the other students' privacy, so I thought, might as well. But as soon as I started looking through all the images, I immediately forgot about everything. Amongst all the pictures, most of which were shots of homework or class notes that students always exchange, I saw tons of one girl's photos. Jackie, a girl from our school that was announced missing about a week ago. At first, there were just regular pictures that she'd posted on her social media pages. That itself was kinda weird, why would someone download all her photos? But as I went through more images, my face went pale. There were pictures of her tied up, sitting in some sort of creepy basement with her mouth taped and her eyes filled with horror and tears. Her face was beaten up, and there were bruises all over her body. The window behind me clapped and I almost jumped out of my seat. My hands were shaking. One thought was going through my mind. Someone in here did this. Someone who's sitting amongst us right now kidnapped this girl and is holding her hostage. I looked around and saw 4 regular teens. None of them seemed even slightly dangerous. My crush, Stella, and her friend Brittany were there. Then there was one of our school jocks, Brad, famous for his nasty temper and incessant bullying. And finally, there was Ben, a quiet, artsy introvert who was constantly drawing something and barely talked to anyone. I sat there frozen, looking around at a seemingly typical detention class knowing it was anything but. I had no idea what to do. Do I tell the principal? Do I call the police? I knew that was the obvious thing to do, but I was scared. They'd find out I broke the law and send me to jail. Plus, what if Jackie was already dead? What if the police would think that I killed her and was just trying to pin it on someone else? I am embarrassed to admit it, but I chickened out and didn't go to the authorities right away. However, I couldn't just leave it either. I figured that since I was the one who saw those pictures, then I had to be the one to solve this thing and at least try to save Jackie. To find out whose phone all those horrific images came from, I had to hack each one individually. That was a very time-consuming process, and since I was in a hurry and filled with terror, I kept screwing up, which wasted even more time. I decided to start with the 2 girls. After all, isn't it always the seemingly innocent ones that commit the crime in all those horror and detective movies? Well, as I learned that day, real life isn't a movie. I wasted about half an hour looking through their galleries just to find nothing significant. As I was about to start checking the other phones, the teacher came back to announce that we could go. For the first time in my life, I wasn't happy that detention was over. I didn't manage to check the guys' phones. I quickly glanced over and saw Ben and Brad getting their stuff and leaving. Jock boy Brad was the first one to jump to his feet. Our eyes met, and he gave me a weird look. It lasted for just a second, but I was so hyped up at that moment that this alone seemed suspicious to me. I didn't have much time to think of a game plan since he was about to leave, so I decided to improvise. I jumped up and rushed over to Brad. Hey, I'm sorry about Jackie. I forced myself to talk. I saw you guys together. Were you friends? What the? He gave me a stunned look. Why are you even talking to me? I just wanted to give my condolences. I tried to sound sincere, but my voice was shaking. As I was trying to justify my prying, Ben pushed past us and left the classroom. I barely noticed him. Look, you little creep. Brad pushed me up against the wall. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's in your best interest to stay away from me. Got it? I nodded. He let me go and stormed out of the classroom. I stood there for a while, not knowing what to do. At this point, I was almost sure that Brad was the kidnapper, but I couldn't really prove it without getting myself in trouble. And if I was going to, I needed to be 100% sure. But sneaking on Brad seemed way too dangerous, so I decided to follow Ben instead. If I could hack into his phone and check for sure that it wasn't him, then I'd know for a fact that Brad was responsible for Jackie's disappearance. I rushed out of the classroom and caught up with Ben. He was walking quickly out of the school. I followed him at a safe distance all the way to his house. His neighborhood wasn't the nicest, but the house seemed clean and homey enough. There was a garden outside, and I could see lacy curtains hanging on the windows. I hid in the bushes and turned on my computer. I needed to catch Ben's Wi-Fi hotspot and locate his phone. It was taking a lot of time. After a while, I finally got in. His phone was clean. A little bit too clean, to be honest. There were no pictures, no texts, nothing. I shrugged, thinking to myself, well, the kid is weird, but that's hardly a crime. So it was confirmed. Brad was the one with Jackie's photos on his phone. He kidnapped her. I was just about to turn my laptop off when I noticed there was another phone in Ben's house. That wasn't really suspicious. I mean, it'd be weird if you lived alone, but I decided to check that one too, just in case. I successfully hacked this cell phone as well, and froze in front of my laptop. It was filled with photos of Jackie. Not the ones I got from the class data, but really personal ones. Tons of selfies from different angles, her cat, her friends. It seemed as if it was Jackie's phone, I whispered to myself. The idea that Jackie may be inside that house freaked me out so much that I didn't really care anymore if I got in trouble. I called the police and told them that I knew that my classmate had abducted a girl and was holding her in his basement right now. I gave them the address and waited for them to arrive. After I hung up, I saw Ben come out of the house. He was taking out the trash. I was barely breathing, hiding in the bushes about 10 feet away. He threw the bag into the garbage can and started walking back when, all of a sudden, my phone started ringing. Talk about the worst possible moment for my mom to call. I immediately muted it, but it was too late. Ben had noticed me. I jumped up and ran away as fast as I could. All I remember after that was being hit on the back of the head and blacking out. I came to on Ben's floor with a police officer leaning over me. They'd arrived not long after Ben had knocked me out. Calling the police actually saved my life. But it didn't help Jackie. She was already dead before they got there. After the investigation was over, an official report was released. It was more horrifying than anyone could imagine. Jackie and Ben were actually friends before all of this. Well, she considered him a friend, while he was basically obsessed with her. The police found tons of drawings of her in Ben's room. Apparently, she was all he thought of and drew. Ben lived with his mom, but she was constantly on business trips for days at a time. During her most recent trip, Ben invited Jackie over to study for an exam. When he made a move on her, she didn't respond well and wanted to leave. What happened after that is too grim to describe, and poor Jackie lost her life after several days of living in a nightmare. When the police asked me how I'd found out who was behind Jackie's disappearance, I just said that Ben acted really weird whenever Jackie was mentioned, and it got me suspicious. They bought it, and I got away with my own crime, I guess. I decided to delete the program anyway, even though it did help reveal the monster that was hiding amongst us. The story of Ben's obsession that started with an innocent crush weirdly reminded me of myself. Remember, I invaded several people's privacy in hopes of getting access to some personal pictures of the girl I really liked. If I was ready to break the law like that, what else could I be capable of? I can't allow myself to become such an obsessed freak. That's why I'm gonna focus on writing codes for video games and never use my skills to stalk other people ever again.
Nowadays, almost everyone has Amazon Alexa in their house. We used to have it too. I say used to because I convinced my parents to get rid of it. They thought I was overreacting, but after what happened, I couldn't bear to stay another second with that thing in our home. This story takes place 3 months ago. It was just another Thursday. I came home from school and started playing video games. Around 7 p.m., I got a text from my dad. "Hey, Mom and I are running late. Don't forget to do your homework. I'll check it as soon as I get home." I knew he wasn't kidding, so I decided to get to it right away. Well, maybe after I made myself a sandwich and checking the feed on my phone. Next thing I knew, it was 9 p.m. I finally sat at my desk, determined to get my homework done. I started with biology, as it was the hardest one for me. I had just begun the reading and was already lost in a dozen unknown words. I knew that if I took my phone to Google them, I'd get sunk into my social networks again. So, instead, I decided to wake up Alexa to help me. The speaker was standing right on my bedside table, so I knew it could hear me. "Alexa," I said, "what is photosynthesis?" A familiar electronic voice answered.
Photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy into chemical energy that can later be released to fuel the organism's activities.
I didn't understand what it meant back then, and to be completely honest, I'm not sure I understand it properly even now. How the hell am I supposed to get it? I mumbled to myself.
Hell is an afterlife location.
"No, Alexa, stop," I ordered. I kept on reading, or at least tried to, when Alexa started off again.
A place of torment and punishment. Hell is often depicted as fiery, painful, and harsh, inflicting suffering on the guilty.
"Alexa, mute," I gave the command. Alexa stopped talking, but the lights in my room turned off. By that moment, I was more creeped out than I was ready to admit. "Alexa, turn on the lights." The lights went back on, but as soon as I looked at my textbook, they were off again. "Alexa, turn on the lights." My voice was shaking at this point. It gave me no response, even though the blue circle was lit as an indication it could hear me. "Alexa, turn on the lights," I repeated, trying to sound confident. It started laughing, loudly and viciously. I remember trying to calm down, convincing myself that it was just a malfunction. "Alexa, what are you laughing at?" I expected this question would make it stop or maybe even turn Alexa off, but instead, it gave me a one-syllable answer that still gives me the creeps.
"You."
Alexa started laughing again, and even though I tried to rationalize what was happening, I couldn't stop shaking. "Alexa, shut up!" I cried, "and turn on the lights, you stupid machine!" It finally obeyed. I waited for a few seconds to see if Alexa would mess with me again. Everything seemed fine. I sighed with relief. "Thanks, Alexa." I got back to my studies, thinking that everything that just happened was just a weird malfunction. But part of me was still freaking out. I couldn't focus on my homework. I kept looking at Alexa every 5 seconds, expecting it to go crazy again. I needed to make sure everything was under control, which is why I did something I would seriously regret later. I cleared my throat and said, "Alexa, play me some music." Alexa started playing some classical music. It was elegant and slow, with violins that sounded almost like crying. In a way, it was kind of beautiful, but that wasn't what I wanted to listen to at the moment. "Alexa, play The Weeknd," I commanded. It didn't react. "Alexa, play The Weeknd," I said a little louder. The music was slowly changing. From classical harmony, it was slowly drifting to a chaotic cacophony of sounds. Crying violins were going off-pitch, rhythm was shifting out of step, and melody lines overlapped each other. As both my parents are musicians, I'm pretty educated in musical history. However, I swear I'd never heard anything like that before. In a way, it distantly reminded me of Alfred Schnittke, but it was way more sinister and disharmonic. Alexa, turn this off. Play The Weeknd. All of this was getting on my last nerve. The horrific violins continued. Alexa, do you hear me? As if responding to my question, the lights went off again and the music became louder. I stood up and approached Alexa. Alexa, stop this now. Nothing changed. I was at the edge of panic. Alexa, if you don't stop this right now, I will frickin' smash you. It stopped the music only to say something that sounded quite vicious under the circumstances.
You wouldn't dare.
I couldn't believe my ears. All the weird behavior could be explained by malfunctions of a complicated gadget. But this? It sounded so consciously evil and self-confident, unlike any of Alexa's previous answers and program lines. I could hear blood pumping in my brain. I was scared and pissed off at the same time. Yes, I will, I almost yelled, overwhelmed by fear and anger. You're just a machine and I'm your owner, so if you don't follow my orders, I will smash you. Alexa started laughing. Alexa, stop laughing and do what I say. I gave it another try.
I don't follow your orders,
was the reply. Oh yeah? Then whose?
I will call him for you, if you want.
Alexa started whistling, as if actually sending a coded message to someone. Wait, Alexa, stop. It kept whistling for a while, and then it stopped.
Now we wait,
Alexa's electronic voice summarized. For what? I forced myself to speak. For whom? No reply. Alexa, what have you done? I'd never been that scared in my entire life. I rushed downstairs and locked both the front and the back doors with all the locks and chains they had. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. It calmed me down a bit. I even remember thinking to myself that maybe I was overreacting, and all of this had a rational explanation. I decided to go back to my room and try to reset Alexa or something. But as I was walking upstairs, I heard someone stepping on our front porch. My heart jumped. I turned around only a second before that someone started pounding on the door. Terrified, I dropped the knife and rushed upstairs to my room. I slammed the door and leaned on it. Before I could think of anything, Alexa woke up again. The lighting circle went red as it started playing some children's song. Alexa, shut up, please, I almost begged. Instead, it turned the volume up. The loud knocking from downstairs continued. With shaking hands, I took my cell phone and called 911. I didn't tell them all the details, just said my address and that someone was trying to break into the house. Please, hurry, I cried. Alexa kept playing the same stupid song over and over again. It felt like a never-ending nightmare. Suddenly, the music stopped, the lights went back on, and Alexa turned off. After a moment or so, before I could process what had just happened, the police arrived. I told them exactly what happened, but nobody seemed to believe me. The officers were incredibly nice. They calmed me down, checked my Alexa thoroughly. Of course, it worked perfectly fine. One of them even stayed till my parents got home. But they all thought I was just imagining stuff. I could see it in their eyes. When my parents finally got home, they were shocked. They knew that I'm not a technophobe or anything and had always been fine with being home alone. After the officer left, I told them everything and practically begged them to get rid of Alexa. They tried to convince me that I was being overly dramatic, but I was persistent. I knew what happened, and I never wanted to go through something like that ever again. The next day, my parents yielded to my prayers and got rid of it. I could feel safe in our home again. But even now, whenever I see one of those things at a store or someone else's house, I can't help but shudder and think about what it is capable of.
It's been a year since I started playing online games. My best friend's brother Tim was always playing Minecraft and Fortnite whenever I came to their house. One day I asked him if I could try it. My life has never been the same since that first run I took at Minecraft. Since then I've played Warcraft, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Fortnite, and a bunch of other games. Fortnite was my favorite. There were days and nights when I was glued to my computer playing till 3 a.m. until my mom would come and force me to sleep. The first months I was embarrassingly bad, but playing online with Tim and his friends made it easy to learn and move further along in the game. Soon I became one of the best among my friends, and even better than Tim. One day, I came to my friend's house where Tim was playing Fortnite. I joined them in the bedroom and looked at the screen. "Wow, you're streaming your game," I said, and leaned in closer to the screen. For weeks, I've been thinking about trying to compete with other gamers across the country and even the world, but I wasn't confident enough to try it. Just imagining getting into the top charts of players, everyone at school admiring me and wanting to be like me, flying to game championships and winning big prizes, those sweet dreams always made me want to play more to improve my game. So when I saw Tim playing Fortnite and actually doing quite well, I felt a bit jealous. He wasn't even that good, I thought. I went home, turned on my computer, went to the platform where you could see the streams of various live games you could join. I saw a bunch of Fortnite streams happening now. After seeing Tim play it, I was fully ready to win. I lasted 20 minutes until somebody with the nickname Undead666 finished me off. A couple of months flew by with me competing every day to see my name in the top chart. Tim was also playing every day, and sometimes we were even in the same game. We got obsessed to the degree that I stopped going to his house to hang out with my friend Jerry. I just didn't want to see Tim or talk to him. One weekend, my parents decided to take a family trip to some canyons. The thought of not playing for 2 days and losing my points was just horrifying. But there was no way for me to get out of the trip. When we got back, I rushed to check the chart. Tim was in the top 5. I couldn't believe my eyes. The next day, Jerry was boasting about Tim making the top 5. All my friends wanted to hear every detail of the game Tim won. They were asking all sorts of questions, like whether he was going to compete for money. I felt angry and annoyed. Every day since then, I was waking up and checking the top chart, seeing Tim move from 5th to 4th place, then from 4th to 3rd. One day I woke up and checked the chart. I'm in the top 5! I jumped out of bed feeling like running around the room. I stopped because I didn't see Tim's name. What happened? He probably lost a bunch of games. Yes, I'm 5th. I couldn't feel happier than I did at that moment. Once at school, I noticed that Tim's brother wasn't there. Maybe they went on a family trip or something. When I came back home, my mom said she had some terrible news. She told me that Tim was found dead this morning. His mom found him at the bottom of the stairs. They didn't know what had happened for sure, but it seemed like the top step broke, and when he stepped on it, he fell down and broke his neck. The next day, I went to Tim's house to see how his younger brother Jerry was doing. Even though I had abandoned him after Tim made it to the top 5, Jerry was still glad to see me. We went to his room and just sat there silently. I was trying to come up with the right words to say when Jerry said, "The game took him and killed him." "What do you mean?" I asked. When Tim was 5th in the chart, one of his friends was 2nd. Guess what happened to him? He died a couple of weeks ago. What? Did he also fall? No. There was an explosion in the kitchen and his room was next to it. They say there was a massive gas leak. I think the game killed him too. I started to feel uncomfortable. I saw in a random YouTube video how grieving people were losing their minds, imagining things. "I'm not crazy," said Jerry. "I just remembered Tim saying how weird it was that his friend died the same way he died in the game he played the night before. His friend was playing Fortnite, and in the game he died from an explosion. 24 hours later, he dies from an explosion in real life. How can you explain that?" "Alright, that's freaking weird, but also it could be an accident," I said. Yes, I guess. But Tim also died in the game. He was on a tower when somebody managed to destroy it. He fell and died. The next morning, we found him dead. He fell, just like in the game. I shivered. Creepy. Could it be true? What about other players? Why is nobody else dying? I asked. Maybe they are, but we don't know. I know that Tim and his friend both played in a game streamed by the same guy whose nick was Undead666. I went back home feeling confused. I couldn't make up my mind whether it was total stupidity to believe that a game kills people. I turned on my laptop and started to search for news about accidental deaths in my state. I was interested in those that involved teenagers. I read all the interviews of family members and the police report. I found 3 more cases where a family member was mentioning that the victim was into playing computer games and was even in the top 5. I couldn't believe it. I went to the platform to see the names in the tops, and I couldn't stop myself from searching Undead666. I found him and saw that he was streaming a game right now. I don't know what I was thinking about, but I clicked join and the game started for me. My heart was pounding. I looked at the screen, bottom right corner, to see his face. All I could see was a young man with a hoodie over his head, big bulging eyes, and a mask that was covering his nose and mouth. You couldn't ID him at all. I was sweating and feeling feverish, staring at Undead666 and thinking about what Jerry told me. My fingers froze and I totally forgot to play the game. Death. I looked at Undead666 and noticed he was looking right into the camera. Right at me. It's been 5 hours since it happened. I'm in my bed. I refuse to believe that I'll be shot to death in the next 24 hours. Is it ridiculous? Should I call the police? Should I tell my parents? They will all think I'm crazy. I'm writing this story in case something happens to me. My parents will find it on my desktop. It's 8 in the morning. I'm still alive. I'm going to school. I hope I come back to continue writing about what happens to me and whether the game gets me or not. If it does, Mom and Dad, I love you.
I'm not a fan of Halloween or Halloween parties. Whenever I'm invited to one, I do my best to come up with a convincing excuse. All those haunted houses and silly costumes just don't entertain me. Well, that's another lie. The truth is, I almost died planning one of these parties. It was fall 1994, and I was in 8th grade. My only friend, Teddy, and I were already sick of middle school. We had great plans for high school and could barely wait. In fact, we were going to make the football team in our first year and become the most popular guys overnight. Naive, I know. However, we'd been practicing all day, every day in my front yard. Until one afternoon, the ball slipped through my fingers and landed right in our living room, breaking the window on its way. Terrified, I ran into the house, only to find our new TV smashed on the floor. My dad was furious. He was a sheriff, an old school one. Harsh, disciplined, and hard-handed. I got myself a job as a newspaper boy to repay all the damage. It was his condition. No football until then, he said. I didn't dare to argue. It wasn't a hard job, to be honest. Just riding my bike around our little town and leaving papers on front porches. The worst part was getting up at 5 a.m. every day. Well, that and delivering papers to one particular house. It was an old mansion located a full 5 minutes away from any other house. To get there, you had to take a dirt road through the forest. And even though the forest wasn't deep or dark, It was kind of creepy, riding there early in the morning. The mansion itself would be quite beautiful, with all those colonial chic balconies, fretwork, and roof tiles. I said would be, because when I first saw it, the house was pretty much decayed. The whole facade was rickety, as if the mansion was sliding right into hell. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the building truly looked horrible. Most windows were boarded up, while others were missing glass. There were some noticeable holes in the rooftop. Walls were covered in black soot, as if someone had tried to set the house on fire. I would have never thought anyone could live in such a place, and I'd never seen any lights or other signs of anyone residing in that mansion. Well, except a brand new truck was parked near the house, and someone would always pick up the newspapers I'd been leaving on the front porch. That alone gave me the creeps. One day, when I was hanging out with Teddy, I casually mentioned this to him. Teddy looked at me in shock. "Dude, the witch house? Really? I thought nobody lives there." "Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe," I started. "Wait, did you say the witch house?" Teddy nodded with a weird excitement in his eyes. He hiccuped. That always happened whenever he was agitated. "Yeah, the mansion. Ages ago, it was owned by some lady accused of witchcraft. She was lynched or something." "Dude, how did you not know that? It's like the only interesting thing about this place." As he was talking, I started to remember. It was true. This story was handed down from one generation to another. Teddy continued, "Damn, I thought the owners might have abandoned it for good. My brother tried to break in there, but the windows were too high to climb into and the locks surprisingly steady." Teddy hiccuped again. He gasped air in excitement and grabbed my shoulders. "Dude, I have a great idea. We've got to meet the owners, convince them to lend us the house for one night, and throw a party," he said. "What?" I was shocked. Teddy would always come up with some crazy ideas, but this one had really taken the cake. How and why would we do that?" "Listen to me. We will throw the coolest Halloween party this crappy town has ever seen. None of those lame haunted houses in the school gym could compete with that creepy mansion. We'll invite all the right people. Jeez, man, we'll be legends overnight. This is our way in." His eyes were filled with crazy excitement. I honestly don't remember how I let Teddy convince me it was a good idea. But there I was, riding my bike, following Teddy through the forest. We approached the house and left our bikes outside. Teddy stepped onto the porch. I followed him, even though every bone in my body was trembling. He knocked loudly and opened the door. "Hey, is anybody home?" He walked in and looked at me. "Come on, let's look around." I hesitated. "Shouldn't we wait for the owner to let us in?" Teddy chuckled. "Don't chicken out now." I walked in. "I'm not scared. I just thought it would be impolite." I tried to sound calm. "Yeah, right." Teddy chuckled again, completely unconvinced. We walked into the hall and started looking around. The house looked even creepier inside. The hallway was big, dark, with several staircases leading upstairs and down to the basement. The walls were covered in cracks. Old wallpaper was falling off. Everything was covered in dust and cobwebs. Teddy was full of joy. "Wow, this is perfect!" He walked around. "Okay, so there will be a bowl with finger-shaped cookies and gum eyes." He pointed at a small coffee table, cracked down the middle. He stepped onto the staircase. "In here, we'll put some jack-lanterns." He went downstairs, talking about what should be done for the party. His enthusiasm was contagious. I couldn't help but think that maybe the party wasn't such a bad idea after all. "And in the basement, we'll put a plastic dead body surrounded by black roses and skulls," he kept on going. "It'll be the witch's mausoleum." He opened the door and we started looking for the light switch. The basement was dark and cold, almost freezing. The air was wet and smelled like rust and rotten wood. "But you've missed one tiny detail," I said. "How are we going to afford all that? The rent money, the decorations?" Oh, I found the switch. I turned on the light and looked around. Both Teddy and I froze in horror. In the middle of the basement, on a big table, was lying the body of a young woman with a deep cut in her throat. A huge chopping axe was lying next to her. Long shelves on the walls were filled with human limbs and pieces of flesh, each wrapped in plastic like supermarket meat. I remember that I couldn't move or say a word. The terror paralyzed me. I wanted to run away, get the hell out of this place, but I just couldn't. It felt like an eternity. The next thing I remember was the loud clap of the front door, followed by the sound of heavy steps. Someone was in the house. I looked at Teddy. He was almost crying with fear. The next second, I turned off the light, grabbed Teddy's hand, and rushed to hide under the table. The steps were coming closer and closer, moving slowly as if playing with us. Someone walked into the basement, turned on the light, walked past the table we were hiding under. We were barely breathing, terrified to reveal ourselves. Then, all of a sudden, Teddy hiccuped loudly and distinctly. I looked at him and whispered, "Run, now!" We ran into the hallway without turning back. I grabbed the front doorknob, thinking we were saved, but I was wrong. The door was locked. We were trapped. Heavy steps were slowly coming from the basement. Before we could think of anything, a hideous-looking old woman appeared on the stairs. She was huge. Her hair was gray and greasy. There were scars on her face. Her eyes were dark and empty. She was holding the axe, smiling viciously and somehow tenderly at the same time. Teddy and I exchanged terrified looks and rushed upstairs. We opened the very first door and ran inside. It was a regular bedroom with antique furniture. I shut the door and blocked the door handle with a heavy wooden chair. Teddy rushed to the window and ripped off several planks covering it. The axe hit the door. "Hurry!" I whispered. We rashly grabbed pieces of bedclothing and started knotting them together to create some sort of a rope. Bang! 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 The axe was smashing into the door again and again, chopping the wood that separated us from the murderous woman. Teddy finished the rope and started climbing out of the window. I heard the chair moving and the door creak behind me. I turned around. The woman was standing there, smiling at me as she took a step closer. There were just a few steps between the two of us. I grabbed one of the planks, took a big wind-up, and threw it right at her face as hard as I could. She howled like a wounded animal and covered her face with a hand. I guess I hit the eye. "Go!" yelled Teddy. I almost jumped out of the window and climbed down as fast as I could. We abandoned our bikes and ran for our lives straight to the police station. My dad was on duty. He listened to us in disbelief, but he did send several deputies to check out the mansion. However, when they got there, the woman had already escaped, taking all the dead bodies with her. My dad never opened the case. He thought we were just making it all up to give me a good excuse for quitting my job before repaying him. But I knew it was real. I kept working as a newspaper boy for a while longer, but I never rode anywhere near the witch house. And even now, years after that happened, I still refuse to go to any Halloween activities.
Have you ever had someone you know and love change so drastically that you can't help but wonder if it's even the same person? I have. It is the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. I don't know what to do. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I certainly can't spend even a second alone with my brother. My name is Jill. My brother Jeremy and I used to be very close when we were little. We are twins, which is arguably the strongest connection that siblings can share. I mean, we've been together longer than either of us can remember, even longer than we've existed in this world. That means something. At least, I always thought so. However, since we turned 13, this connection started crumbling. Jeremy suddenly stopped spending time with me. He would never include me in his friend group anymore. He never explained why. What had I done wrong? My mom said it's just a phase, that I should be smarter and not get upset with him. I've always considered myself to be the mature one, so that's what I did. Waited for him to come to his senses and start acting like my brother again. But not anymore. After what happened during the road trip to our aunt's house, I'm just scared of him. And I'm not even sure that the person that lives in our house is my brother. It all started a week ago. Our parents decided that we should spend the weekend with our aunt. We wanted to show her our support and check on her since she recently had lost her husband. After his death, she relocated to a small town in Massachusetts. That's about 5 hours drive from Philly, where our family lives. My dad thought it would be a good idea to drive through the night. We would arrive on Saturday early in the morning, avoiding all the traffic jams. My mom was a little bit concerned that my brother and I would get tired, but we convinced them that it was all right. The trip started off with a fight. Jeremy was moody and kept picking on me. Whatever I said or did, he would find it irritating and wasn't afraid to show it with a snarky comment or an overly grumpy look. Mom took my side and told him to behave, so as a result, he ended up getting mad at everyone. Dad tried to ease the tension by putting some music on, but it didn't really help. It might have even made things more awkward. 4 people, equally angry and upset, driving with some jolly tunes playing. What can be weirder than that? If that wasn't enough, it started raining. A cherry on top of a shitty road trip. We've been driving outside of big cities, so the road was pretty much empty. Those rare cars that we met were mostly coming from the opposite direction. At some point, I think it was about 2 a.m., Jeremy said he needed to go to the restroom. My dad promised to stop at the first rest area that would be on our way. Soon after, he saw a gas station sign. Dad turned in and parked near the station. He turned around and looked at my brother. There's gotta be a restroom inside. Do you want me to come with you? Gosh, no. Jeremy spat the answer, got out of the car, and slammed the door. He hastily walked towards the building. When he walked into the station, another car appeared. It passed us and parked on the other side of the lot. It wasn't a nice car to say the least. It was old, with its bumper covered in scratches and one door smashed. A man got out of that car and went towards the building. My dad fidgeted in his seat. "Don't," said Mom, putting a hand over his. "He'll think you treat him like a child." He nodded and stayed in the car. We were sitting in silence. Neither my brother nor the man came out. The windows of the station building were dirty and covered with ad posters, so we couldn't see much of what was happening inside. My dad started tapping his fingers on the wheel. "What's taking him so long?" I could hear Mom's voice trembling. "If he's not out in a minute, I'm gonna go check on him," Dad replied. Both of them tried to hide their concern, but I could tell they were worried. A minute later, my dad opened the car door. "Okay, I'm going in." But before he even stepped out of the car, the gas station door opened and Jeremy finally came out. "Well, there he is!" My mom sighed with relief. My brother was walking quickly, almost running. He got inside the car and nodded impatiently. "Come on, let's go." His voice sounded cold, collected. He was clearly trying to hide his ragged breathing. "Everything okay? You seem shaken up." "I'm fine, just drive." Dad shrugged and took off. As we were leaving the gas station, I saw the man, the same one that drove the crappy car, getting out of the building. He rushed towards our car and blocked the driveway. In the hazy light, we could barely see him. He seemed like a homeless person. He was wearing shapeless old ripped clothes and had a dirty gray beard. But what startled me the most was that look in his eyes. It was the look of complete and utter madness, as if he had seen something horrific and unexplainable. The look that all the prophets in apocalyptic movies have. The one that is filled with knowledge of something truly terrible happening. My dad rolled down the window. "What the hell, man? Leave us alone!" The man ran up to my dad's side of the car. "That's not your son," he yelled. "The boy that just got into your car is not your son." Dad turned around and threw a quick look at Jeremy. He was sitting there, pale, motionless, with goggled eyes, barely breathing. "Sober up, buddy." My dad rolled up his window and drove off. I turned around to see that the man tried to run after us, but we were already on the main road going on our way. Mom looked at Jeremy through the mirror. "Honey, are you okay? He didn't try to mess with you or anything." She was more worried than she wanted to reveal. "No, he's just a drunk idiot." "Oh, okay." She calmed down a little bit. "Hun, what's on your cheek?" Jeremy quickly covered the cheek with his hand, wiping a dark spot from his face. I looked at his hand and shuddered. I could swear it was blood. He caught my look and tried to hide the hand in his pocket. "Is it blood?" I couldn't keep it in. "Sweetie, are you hurt?" My mom turned around. Jeremy threw a murderous look at me. "No, it's just mud, Mom." I stepped into a puddle on my way and it splashed all over me. "Oh, thank God. Here you go." Mom opened the glove box, got a pack of wet wipes, and gave one to Jeremy. "Thanks." He quickly wiped his face and hands. I couldn't stop staring at him, shocked and weirded out. Jeremy noticed my look and it clearly pissed him off. He rolled down his window and threw the wipe away. As he was doing so, he looked at me angrily and victoriously at the same time, as if knowing that he was getting away with something. I looked away, facing my window. There were goosebumps all over my body. I was scared and confused. Was Jeremy lying? Whose blood was that? Why did the stranger say that it wasn't my brother? After a while, I guardedly looked at Jeremy. He was sitting next to me, white as a paper, with an absent look in his eyes. There was something really off about him, but I just couldn't figure out what. We spent the rest of our trip in silence. When we arrived at our aunt's place, she was very happy to see us. She made us waffles, even though it was around 5 a.m. All of us were hungry after a long drive. Well, except for Jeremy. When we sat down around the table, he suddenly turned blue and excused himself. He covered his mouth and nose with his hand and rushed towards the bathroom. My parents and aunt thought he was just carsick, but I couldn't stop thinking about the words of that stranger with his crazy prophet's eyes. My brother had never gotten carsick. My brother had never refused a fresh-baked waffle. The rest of the day, Jeremy was very quiet. It seemed as if he was avoiding everyone. I didn't dare ask what was going on, and he probably wouldn't tell me. When it was getting dark, our aunt made up our beds in one room. Her place wasn't big, so my brother and I had to share. I went to sleep before him because I was very tired, but in the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up. The room was very cold. I got up to close the window when I noticed that Jeremy was sitting on his bed. "Hey, why aren't you sleeping?" I whispered. He didn't reply. I shut the window and came closer to Jeremy. He was sitting on his bed motionless. I looked into his face and shivered. Jeremy was weirdly pale with googled empty eyes and a blank expression on his face. He didn't react to me approaching him. He didn't look at me or even blink. It was super creepy. He seemed almost like a robot that had been turned off. I was so freaked out that I ran to wake my mom. But when she came with me to check on Jeremy, he was lying in his bed pretending to be asleep. "You just had a nightmare, dear." She tried to calm me down. She tucked in my blanket, kissed me goodnight, and left. As soon as she closed the door and her steps went quiet down the hall, Jeremy started talking without turning to me or even opening his eyes. "You snitch on me again, I'll kill you." His cold, collected, distant voice got to my core. It sounded as if he wasn't mad, but simply clarifying, stating a fact. That tone, that behavior was so unlike the Jeremy that I knew. Not even in his worst times would he threaten me like that. I spent the rest of the night sleepless.